When it comes to the politics of deeply divided places and people, there is no such thing as an easy or a straightforward conversation. Every conversation is complex and very challenging and often involves extreme levels of violence. I come from the central highlands of Sri Lanka, which was not where the island's 30-year civil war happened. The war happened in northern and eastern Sri Lanka, regions with a Tamil majority. Coming from the Sinhala community, the country's ethnic majority, war to me, in my young years, was something happening far away in a distant part of the island. In those analog times, it was through the newspapers and the radio and TV news bulletins that the war front came close to us. In 1996, something happened that completely changed the way in which I saw the world. In September that year, Krishanti Kumaraswamy, a Tamil girl in northern Sri Lanka, who was just a few years older than me, was on her way back home from school after sitting for her A-level chemistry exam. She was stopped at a Sri Lankan military checkpoint. Then she was asked to alight from her bicycle. Now, I will not go into much detail about what happened thereafter. She was set upon by a group of soldiers, and what happened was a heinous act of sexual violence. Then she was murdered. So were her mother, younger brother, and a family friend who later went looking for her. Unlike most cases of conflict-related sexual violence committed by armed forces, Krishanti's tragedy made its way to the news headlines. Reading about this extremely tragic and violent incident in the newspapers, I was left completely devastated. At the time, I myself was going through a very tough childhood with its share of violence, abuse, bullying, and what I know today to be a mixture of misogyny and queerphobia in a society with a very low understanding of queerness and an intolerance of people who do not conform to its conservative ways. There were many nights when I would just cry myself to sleep, thinking that the best outcome for me would be for life to end. Reading about the extreme violence Krishanti went through in those last moments of her short life, I realized something that completely changed me. I may not have had the exact words to articulate this back then, but in my head, the idea was crystal clear that Krishanti's liberation and mine, despite the two of us being from very different backgrounds, were interconnected. Krishanti's reality as a Tamil girl in northern Sri Lanka made life a lot tougher for her than it was for me. But despite this absolute truth, the source of the violence she faced and the source of the violence I was facing at the time had common roots, which I know today to describe as patriarchy, misogyny, and this violent inclination to control, this obsession to control those who are perceived to be of lesser value or as weak. I may not have had the exact words to articulate this very clearly back then, but the idea was very clear to me. That There would be no justice for me without justice for Krishanti. It was only many years later, as an undergraduate student in a French public university with a specialization in African American studies, that I first came across Dr. Audre Lorde's timeless words, "I am not free while any other woman is unfree, even when her shackles are very different from my own." Now, this basic reality that irrespective of where we come from, irrespective of what our lived experiences are, that our destinies are interconnected, is essential if we are to work towards durable peace settlements. However, saying this out loud is sometimes not very welcome. We live in a world where war speaks louder than wisdom, where power flexes its muscles instead of flexing its mind, where military activity is extremely lucrative. Now, peace settlements, real ones, require something that those loud and destructive weapons cannot give us: the ability to sit with discomfort. Peace requires long, slow, patient dialogues. Dialogues where we not only clarify our positions, but also acknowledge our wounds. Dialogues where we not only confront our opponents, but also hold our own accountable. And most importantly, dialogues where we agree to disagree without tearing each other apart. Agreeing to disagree with a commitment to a shared future where no one, absolutely no one, will have to face the kind of violence Krishanti faced. Now, to get there, we have to fiercely reclaim space for conversations. We live in a world today where it is very difficult to have constructive conversations across divides. Now, reclaiming that space is personal and public all at the same time. In healing my own wounds and honoring Krishanti's memory as a member of Sri Lanka's ethnic majority, the path that I have chosen is one of creating, recreating, and co-creating spaces for global conversations. These are spaces where we critically, intentionally reimagine what it would be like to live in a different world, in a more loving, more caring world. Now, one such space that I hold very dear to my heart is a feminist space where conversations happen in my native language, the Sinhala language, where I have the great pleasure and honor of sharing space with two of the smartest women I know. And the sisterhood we have developed in that space and continue to develop, and the love that we hold for each other are central to our individual and collective healing and to our collective work of inclusive world making. When we confront the fire of conflict-related violence, we have no option but to commit to creating a new kind of hearth where the heat doesn't lead to more confrontation, but to a more comforting kind of warmth. Peace happens when we resolutely refuse to silence our shared humanity. So let us all together, collectively, once again remember those wise words of Dr. Audre Lorde. This time, as those words apply to each and every one of us. I am not free, while any other person is unfree, even when their shackles are very different from my own. So today, I ask you this: what kind of space can you create for peace, for conversations on a loving and caring world? What kind of conversations can you develop, even when it's hard, to help people like me, people like Krishanti, and many of us? Because conversation is not the opposite of conflict. Conversation is the beginning of change. Thank you. Ayubowan.